Picture this: a village where children walk to school past a 200-year-old chapel, where the post office window glows with lamplight every evening, where 67 people live almost exactly as their grandparents did, farming, praying, speaking a language older than England itself. Now picture that village, gone, not abandoned, not burned, drowned, buried under 68 million tons of water, on purpose, by men who never lived there and never asked permission. This isn't fiction. This happened in Britain, within living memory. In 1965, a city council 200 miles away decided one Welsh valley would die, so their taps could keep running. They passed a private law that made local consent legally irrelevant. They ignored a decade of protest, marches, petitions, even prison sentences. And when the villagers of Capel Celyn begged for their homes, they were answered with a vote, 95-1. Then the water came. The school where children learned their letters, gone. The cemetery where families buried their dead for a century, dug up and moved. The bodies displaced before the living even left. The chapel bell that rang every Sunday for generations, silenced forever beneath the surface of a man-made lake. Somewhere at the bottom of that reservoir, a village is still standing, waiting. What happens when power decides a community simply isn't worth saving? To understand how this happened, you have to go back to December 1955. 4 days before Christmas, the villagers of Capel Celyn did not receive a letter. They did not receive a visit. They found out their homes were marked for destruction by reading it in a Welsh language T2 newspaper, tucked inside the pages of the Liverpool Daily Post. The Tryweryn Valley sat in the shadow of Snowdonia, in Merionethshire, North Wales. Capel Celyn was one of the last communities left in Britain where Welsh was the only language spoken at home, a living fragment of a culture already vanishing. 12 farms, a school, a post office, a Methodist chapel built in 1820, its graveyard holding generations of the same families. This was not a dying place. It had electricity, radios, even televisions arriving in homes. It was alive. Liverpool Corporation wanted it anyway. For water, to feed the pipes of a growing industrial city, and the profits of selling that water to 24 other authorities. The villagers fought back. They formed the Capel Celyn Defense Committee. They marched through the streets of Liverpool, twice, carrying banners, pleading their case in a city that had never met them. 125 local authorities across Britain backed their objection. Every single Welsh member of Parliament who cast a vote voted against the bill. It made no difference whatsoever. Liverpool used a legal loophole most people have never heard of, a private act of Parliament, one that meant Wales never got a public inquiry, never got a real vote. The decision had already been made, in a city that would never feel the loss, and the worst part hadn't even happened yet. By 1957, the bill had passed, royal assent given, and that's when the true horror of Tryweryn began. Not with soldiers, not with violence, but with paperwork, bulldozers, and silence. Engineers moved into the valley to survey the land they intended to erase. Boreholes were drilled, trial pits dug. Families who had farmed this soil for generations were told, quite simply, to leave. There was no negotiation left to have. And then came a detail that still unsettles historians today. Before the living were removed, the dead were. The cemetery beside Capel Celyn's chapel had to be dug up first. Coffins, headstones, the remains of people who had lived and died, believing their resting was permanent, all relocated to make way for a reservoir. Imagine burying your grandmother twice. The village's school, Llyn Capel Celyn, was inspected one final time, its report filed away, its classroom emptied for good. Not everyone accepted this quietly. In 1962, 2 men crept onto the dam construction site and sabotaged the machinery. They were caught, fined £50 each, a punishment so small it barely counted as justice. A year later, a more radical group calling itself Mudiad Amddiffyn Cymru, the movement for the defense of Wales, went further. They planted an explosive device and detonated a transformer at the dam site. 3 men went to prison for a year. Wales was not going quietly. But it didn't matter. By 1965, the last resistance had failed. The dam was finished. The valves were ready. And on a day chosen by men who had never set foot in Capel Celyn's chapel, never prayed under its roof, never buried a single ancestor in its churchyard, the sluice gates opened. 68 million tons of water began to rise. 12 houses and farms disappeared beneath it. 48 people watched their entire world vanish in front of them, in silence, in real time. In October 1965, Liverpool Corporation held an opening ceremony at the new reservoir. Officials, speeches, photographs, taken on land that used to be someone's kitchen. They were met with fury. Hundreds of protesters descended on the site. Demonstrators clashed with police, tried to physically block officials from reaching the ceremony. For the first time, uniformed members of the Free Wales Army appeared in public, rallying the crowd to storm the grandstand. What should have been a celebration became a battlefield of grief and rage. No one was ever punished for what happened to Capel Celyn. No inquiry found anyone accountable. The council that voted it through faced no consequences beyond public anger. The villagers received compensation, but no amount of money rebuilds a chapel, a graveyard, or a language spoken nowhere else on earth in quite the same way. But something else happened. Something Liverpool never expected. Wales remembered. The phrase, Coffic Tryweryn, remember Tryweryn, was painted on a stone wall in 1963 and has been repainted, defaced, and restored ever since, becoming one of the most recognized political slogans in Welsh history. Support for Welsh nationalism surged in the years that followed. A tragedy meant to be quietly forgotten became the opposite, a permanent scar that helped shape a nation's push for its own political voice. It took until 2005, 40 years, for Liverpool City Council to formally apologize, expressing regret for what they called insensitivity. Many in Wales called it too little, far too late, and noted the apology never addressed whether the flooding was even necessary. And here's what should unsettle you most. This still happens. Communities are still displaced today for dams, pipelines, and power projects, with those in charge deciding whose home is worth more than whose. Capel Celyn teaches us something uncomfortable, that power rarely announces itself as cruelty. It arrives wearing the language of progress, of necessity, of the greater good. It holds a vote you were never invited to, and by the time you realize what's been decided, the water is already rising. Somewhere beneath Llyn Celyn, when drought lowers the water level, the ruins of Capel Celyn still surface. Stone walls, a bridge, the outline of a home, a silent reminder that no amount of water can fully erase what a community once was. The question this history leaves behind isn't really about Wales, or Liverpool, or 1965. It's about now, about who decides which communities matter, and which are simply in the way. So we have to ask you, if it happened to your home, your street, your family's history, would anyone even remember? Tell us what you think in the comments below. And if this story moved you, subscribe. There are more forgotten histories waiting beneath the surface.